Hello, everybody. You've tuned in to Eric Jose on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I cover Making a Murderer, Stephen Avery, and Brendan Dassey. I cover some other cases at times. I go over the documents, the photos, videos, anything case related. Plenty of videos you can check out, just like the one you're about to see. Hey, how you doing, folks? We're here today to talk a little bit about OJ. If you saw my previous video, I was watching show about it this weekend and stuff. So, I was watching the People versus O.J. Simpson, the American Crime series. You guys can catch it on Netflix. It's available on Netflix, and it's interesting. Most people have seen it, but so I was watching that, getting thinking about the case and whatever. So, I kind of wanted to. For me, it's like when I think about the O.J. Simpson case, I mean, there's a combination of reasons I think why he was found not guilty. I personally believe he did it. It's pretty obvious, especially when you look at the DNA evidence that he did it. It would have been, it's just, OJ in a lot of ways is different than other cases because he's such a celebrity and everything. It's just a lot of factors, a lot of things that came together on it. But when you think about it, it's just the DNA and the evidence against him was pretty strong. It's just that at that time, being the first case with DNA evidence and people just weren't really used to it yet or know what it was yet, it just didn't. I don't think it resonated with the jury at that time. Really, being the first case. So I think because the DNA wasn't really able to resonate because it was kind of an unknown really at the time. I think the jury was kind of able to overlook it and look past that because they loved, because a lot of people people loved OJ. OJ was just, he was very well loved. It was, even I wanted to try to look past what was happening, but it was brutal what happened, and it wasn't easy to just go ahead and try to look past it. So, but yeah, when you look at all that evidence now, and we all now understand DNA a heck of a lot better and what it means and stuff. We know that case was pretty solid. But for me, the reason why it's able to float by the way it did was, number one, because DNA was it was literally the first case. It was unknown. It was all those things. It's O.J. Simpson, a huge celebrity who's very well loved and very well liked. All over the world, basically. And then you have, the glove. Okay, when he tries on the gloves in court and they don't fit. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that say that's easily explained. He wasn't allowed to take his blood pressure medication while he was being held for trial, and that caused his hands to swell up. Okay, could be explanations. I'm not debating that right now. I'm just saying that for the jury to sit there and watch OJ try to put those gloves on and not be able to do it, that would have been a factor. And then you throw in, to my mind, the cherry on top that just frames it up all with a nice little bow, and that is Detective Mark Fuhrman. The jury had the things that I've already talked about, right? Those factors, right, in the mix. And then we get to Detective Fuhrman. Now, it's unfortunate that Marsha Clark didn't take Chris Darden's advice when he kept telling her, no, we need to get a different, officer besides Fuhrman. He was able to see, the what was possibly coming. He was anticipating it, and he was trying to tell her, but it would seem she was assuming that he was just taking things personal or whatever or something and ignored it. And then in the show you see like the realization at the point when it all starts to fall apart, when they start bringing those tapes that they find in court down in South Carolina, that Johnny Cochran and F. Lee Bailey go down there and get the tapes, where you just, Mark Fuhrman is just on there talking, and it's just like, whoa, it's just quite shocking, really. And so then that gets brought in, and Judge Ito allows just enough of it so that the defense can prove their point and impeach Mark Furman as a witness and all that. But the part about it that is particularly that I feel would have resonated with the jury, that would have made them feel like something, like the cops had done something wrong here, and could make them question all this weird DNA stuff that they don't really know or understand. I think it all comes down to Furman, in my opinion. Because you think about what happens, right? I mean, it starts out, Furman is like this, golden child. Everybody loves him. When he testified, he rated well, and things like that, and the way F. Lee Bailey questioned him, F. Lee Bailey even made him look good because he was bringing out his military service and stuff like that. I mean, F. Lee Bailey was going a roundabout way. I think he was trying to build a kind of a rapport with him or whatever, because they're both ex-Marines. F. Lee Bailey was a Marine pilot and stuff like that. Anyway, so he ended up bringing out all this stuff about Mark Furman that made people, yeah, he's a good guy. Okay, yeah, he's a good guy, whatever. And then he goes into where he's asking Mark Furman about all the racial slurs, and he's like, "Have you ever said, did you ever speak to this person and say da 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 da?" And you have using the N-word and all those things, and he's going at Mark Furman pretty strong, and Mark Furman just casually and just calm and cool, collected, stands there and just says, "No, I don't remember that person," or "I don't know that person," or "No, I never said that." No, 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 no. Deny, deny, deny. Right? So it's funny to me because when I watch the stuff I watch on YouTube, I get to watch whatever broadcast from whatever station was broadcasting the trial that day or whatever, right? And you'll see they'll cut away to legal analysts. And I was talking about this in my last video. It was funny because there was after that part of the cross-examination, there was a recess and it cut away, and so the station that was airing the coverage had these legal analysts standing by, and who immediately started to talk about what had happened and stuff. And there was three of them, and two of them were immediately like, "F. Lee Bailey, what was he thinking? I mean, he's talking about all that, he's bringing out his military service, and he's just making him seem like more a great guy, and da 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 whatever, and all that stuff." And then they're like, "And what was it with him going after him about those, about using the N-word?" And they were criticizing him for the way that he was going after Mark Furman, especially after kind of helping to set him up to make him look kind of so good, talking about the things I was just talking about, like his military service and so on. So some people were just, they found it distasteful or whatever, but one of the legal analysts there just kind of caught it and understood it for what it was, and he interrupted the other two and said, "Well, actually here what happened is now F. Lee Bailey has just pinned Mark Furman down. He's asked him, has he used these terms? Has he done this ever in the last whatever years? Has he done whatever? You know what I mean? He's he's pinning him down and saying that, and if you used these terms, they would stand out in your memory. Is that right, Mr. Furman?" And and Mark Furman says, "Yes, they would stand out in his memory." And when you really get down to it, what F. Lee Bailey's questions do is just completely pin Mark Furman down. And it didn't do anything at the time, right there during his cross-examination. At that point in time, Mark Furman came out of it and he was looking okay until the tapes came later. The tapes with him, cuckoo. And so like I said, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to look right now into the first bit. Right now, where we're going to see basically F. Lee Bailey examining Mark Furman and asking him all those things. And then we'll come on back and then we'll head into the bit that I think stuck with the jury.
A person who, while in the Marine Corps, had been in some kind of special division?
No.
All right. Did you serve in Vietnam at all?
Not in country, no.
Not in country?
I was on a ship.
Okay. But it was called being stationed in Vietnam, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you say, while in the recruiting station, at any time during those years, that when you see a nigger driving with a white woman, you pull them over?
No.
Do you recall anyone asking you, if you didn't have a reason to pull them over, what would you do?
I don't recall anybody ever asking me that question, sir.
Did you ever make the statement that if you needed a reason, you would find one?
No.
Okay. Next paragraph. Did you say at any time in that recruiting station, in the presence of any female, including Kathleen Bell, that you would like nothing more than to see all niggers gathered together and killed?
No.
Are you aware, bottom of the page, of any complaint that was brought to the LAPD by this individual?
I am not aware of any investigation, no.
But you are aware that she has appeared on public television and made essentially these same claims, correct?
Yes.
Have you started any lawsuits against her?
No.
Have you brought claim against her for defamation?
No.
See? All right. Now, you told us yesterday that you do not know, as I understand it, an Andrea Terry.
That's correct.
Can you recall at any time a blonde woman suggesting that she had an attractive but tall friend?
No.
Do you recall at any time in the presence of Joe Foss being asked by a woman if you were interested in a date?
No.
That never happened that you can recall?
No.
Is it the kind of thing that you would remember if it had occurred, being asked for a date in the presence of Joe Foss?
I think in the presence of anybody, if I was interested in the woman or it went farther than that, I think I would probably remember it.
Let's assume you weren't interested. Said, hey, you're not my type. Brushed her off. Would you remember being invited on a date if it had happened there?
I would say not.
Okay. Would you remember, Detective Furman, if you had used the language that we have just reviewed?
Yes.
That is important enough language to you so that it would impress itself on your memory, as did the meeting with the Simpsons in '85. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You told us yesterday that you do go into Hennessy's Tavern.
Yes, sir.
You do not have a recollection of the name Andrea Terry being there?
All right, we're on Andrea Terry now?
Yes, yes.
Right. Mr. Harris?
Take it down. You don't remember the name Andrea Terry, a woman over 6 feet high, or a woman in the company of someone you now know to be Kathleen Bell?
No, I do not.
Did you have a conversation in '85 and '86 in Hennessy's Tavern with a tall woman wherein you said that black men who have white women in their company are violating an act of nature,
No.
and that you would arrest them whenever you saw that occur?
No.
That did not occur at any time.
No.
And is that the kind of language or expression, Detective Furman, that you would remember clearly if those statements had been made?
Yes.
So as of the moment, you would say that if either Kathleen Bell or Andrea Terry claims that you made those statements, that would necessarily be false.
Yes.
And that if Joe Foss, the Marine, says that he in fact introduced you to Kathleen Bell outside the recruiting station as she emerged from a coffee shop, and that the two of you talked about a date, that would necessarily be false.
That's correct.
So what F. Lee Bailey is doing there is that he has two witnesses that gave statements or whatever, signed statements. Judge Ito gave, the okay for F. Lee Bailey to examine Mark Furman and ask him about these women who claim they heard him making statements. So that's what you're seeing here is he's asking Mark Furman about these two women and basically about the statements that these women claim that he made, right? And so that's what's happening there. So and that's how it's the question's getting brought up. When he's asking, do you say did you ever say this? Did you ever say that? N-word this or N-word that? Did you ever say that if you saw a black man with a white woman that you would arrest them or him or and all that stuff? But all at the same time. He's wrapping it all up, several times he says, really, in there, that when he's asking him these questions, he's like, because this type of language, if you had used this type of language, it would have stuck out in your memory if you had used it, if you had said these things, right? And he's making a point to say that, oh yeah, because this kind of language would stand out, right? You would never forget that you used this type of language, right? That's what F. Lee Bailey's doing all the while he's asking him about these statements, and I think it's brilliant, because it really sets Mark Furman up for the eventual impeachment, which we're going to see now, when he gets brought back up on the stand, and he's like a puppy with its tail between its legs. That's really what it's like, and the key thing about this, is after he got pinned down by F. Lee Bailey like that, and then the tapes emerge, where, and it's bad for those that don't know. There's one point where he's describing him and some officers going into some kind of a project home or whatever. They're in a stairway. They go up. They find some girl. They grab her and use her as like a shield as they go into this apartment where these four guys are. It basically becomes a bloodbath. He talks about how they're all so covered in blood, him and his fellow officers, but they, after they were done, they went out and they basically just washed their hands because the blood showed up on their hands and face and everything else. But the dark blue of their uniforms hid the blood, so they were able to go outside, wash off their hands and their faces and whatever, and get all the visible blood off, and then go out and direct traffic. That's how disturbing what he's saying on these tapes is, and it's just, very disturbing. So when you see this next part, you see him coming into court and looking like a puppy with his tail between his legs. Well, that's because that's exactly what he is, really. So here we go. We'll let you see that and we'll come on back.
All right. Good afternoon, Detective.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
You're reminded, sir, that you were still under oath. Mr. Ullman, you may proceed.
Detective Furman, was the testimony that you gave in this case completely truthful?
I wish to assert my Fifth Amendment privilege.
Have you ever falsified a police report?
I wish to assert my Fifth Amendment privilege.
Is it your intention to assert your Fifth Amendment privilege with respect to all questions that I ask you?
Yes.
I only have one other question, Your Honor.
What was that, Mr. Ullman?
Detective Furman, did you plant or manufacture any evidence in this case?
I assert my Fifth Amendment privilege.
So, you see what I'm saying there. That was right near the end of trial when that went down. So that was like one of the very last things that happened that the jury was left with when they went into deliberations, is Mark Furman up there pleading the Fifth in response to a question about fabricating and planting evidence. So in addition to, like I said, it was a downtown jury, which was bound to have a fair amount of African Americans on it, that, the fact that the gloves obviously didn't fit, and that was a very visual thing for the jury that they saw. DNA was still in its infancy. It was pretty much like the first case it was ever being used in, really. People didn't understand it or know if they could trust it yet. It was just too new. It was just the first time. So I think that the jury was kind of able to kind of look past it, because they didn't know what it was. We don't know what that even is. So, they didn't give it the full, credence they probably should have. And the fact that OJ was such a huge and beloved celebrity, and then, like I said, the capper is what you saw right there, Mark Furman. He's right there because he screwed up so bad that he screwed up so bad that he had to plead the Fifth when they asked him whether or not he had fabricated or planted evidence. he was in such dire straits at that point that that was the only answer he could give. And yeah, that's, to me, I'm sure that sat with the jury. I'm sure the jury was thinking about that during deliberations. Definitely. I mean, how could they not? How could they not be thinking about the, one of the star witnesses for the prosecution coming up on stand at the end and having to answer a question like that in that way, pleading the fifth. So I think all those things together, came together and gave this jury a reason to give OJ a get out of jail free card, essentially. I don't think OJ would have gotten so lucky a second time. If there had been like a mistrial or something where the trial had to go again, I think it would have gone badly for OJ. But like I said, because DNA just wasn't fully understood at the time, I just think it's a kind of a mixture of a bunch of things that kind of just the perfect time. Well, I say the perfect time, but I mean it was just the timing for it to happen was just at a time when it was just possible for him to slip through the cracks. That much DNA evidence now, I mean, it's pretty much a slam dunk. So that's basically my little analysis of OJ today, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. It's I often wonder, would the jury have gone the other way? Maybe if Mark Furman hadn't been there pleading the fifth, right at the end of trial or near the end of trial, in such a way where it would have been sticking with them when they went into the deliberations. Would they possibly have decided that OJ was guilty if that hadn't happened? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of what ifs. Obviously, Chris Darden's kicking himself because he basically challenged the defense and had them bring OJ over to try on the gloves. He probably wishes he wouldn't have done that now. And maybe if that hadn't happened, the jury might have ended up finding OJ guilty. I mean, for me, it would be, I mean, it's kind of interesting to hypothesize whether or not, if you remove any one or two of these kind of factors that I've stated that kind of, I think, collaborated to get OJ basically off of this criminal charge. It'd be interesting to, I mean, it's just interesting to contemplate if any one or two of them were not there, would the verdict have gone the other way? But anyway, that's about it for today, folks. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you.